Welcome, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video, and we're working on Sand Devil Necropolis again. I know many of you are bleh on this one, but today I thought we'd talk about how to climb the Sand Devil, specifically getting from like stages 13 or so all the way up to 19, because I feel like that's actually the hardest part for a lot of people. There's a fair amount of speed tunes for once you get to stage 20 and higher. Most of those tunes work for 20 through 25. This is more, how do we get there, right? How do we climb that area? Because doing the earlier levels isn't particularly hard, right? It takes a little bit of understanding, but mostly you just bring in heavy damage dealers, bring in some healing, and you're going to be fine. It's not a huge trick on how to do that, and I'll have a couple videos out coming up on how to do that specifically if that's something you want to do. But I figured, getting the higher stages from like 13 to 19 is actually really hard. The boss starts to hit really, really hard. You need to start kind of figuring out exactly who you have, unless you just want to, use a God Seeker kind of cheese approach to it, which I think is totally valid. And, do that if you can, if it works for you. But those can be a little bit more difficult to build out as well, right? And, you're kind of changing the speeds every time you hit a new level. So I came up with an Unkillable speed tune just to climb. It's not the kind of build that I'm going to farm with. It takes way too long. These are not fast runs. And it does take a smidge of manual just to set it up because of the timing of the skills, but it works. And I think it actually works really, really well. And so that's kind of what I wanted to show you guys today is, how I climbed from all the way up to stage 19, because once I unlocked stage 20, I was able to, build some, more common speed tunes to actually get through it. And those are teams that I can farm with at that point, right? But getting there, I didn't need to do that. I didn't want to spend a ton of, energy and silver building up a bunch of different teams. So I built this one team that the runs are slow. It took a little bit of manualing, took maybe an hour or two out of my day. But once I did that, I was able to get to the higher stages and have them fully unlocked. So this is not going to be for everybody. This is an unkillable team. So if you don't have unkillable champions, this is going to be rather difficult for you. But if you have those champions, this should be an approach that you can take yourself and advance up the dungeon. I talk about some substitutions, some different champions. I'm going to cover all that kind of at the end. I do want to give you a little preface. I don't like have a stats page where I'm showing all the builds of these champions because it doesn't matter. It's unkillable, right? It doesn't matter how strong or tough they are, or whatever. All you really need to care about are the speeds and still adhere to the clan boss rules. No turn meter manipulation, no skill cooldowns. If you do that, you should be in pretty good shape here, right? So let's go ahead. I'll show you, the team I'm using. I kind of cover over why the skills are being used, how they're being used. We'll show you a little bit of the run. We won't show the whole run because the runs are actually really long. And then at the end, I'll go over it all again and talk more specifically about substitutions and how to make them, where to make them. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one that comes out. And of course, if you enjoyed today's music, we have that link down below in the pinned comment and description of this video, and you can use code DeadwoodJedi, save yourself 15%. And of course, if you want some account work, you don't like doing the work yourself, I'm more than happy to do it for you. My team is at the beck and call. Just visit my website, deadwoodjedi.com. Now, the way I'm doing this, you can see I've already, I've tested on a few levels. I already played around with it. This should work all the way up into stage 19 without having to change any of the speeds the champions I'm using. And we are going to be using a man-eater. That's definitely going to be important. I'm actually going to be using 2 man-eaters in this, though I don't think you necessarily have to, but it's probably going to be a cleaner run if you do it that way, just because of the cooldowns of the skills and stuff like that. There's always alternative possibilities, right? And I think there are definitely some other champions we could be bringing in to, mess around with the speeds, but, there's really only one champion that has to be, or 1 or 2 champions that have to be at specific speeds. Otherwise, you just need to make sure certain skills are happening in certain speed slots, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what it is. So I'm just going to start running one of these. These aren't fast runs, but this way you guys are going to be able to see kind of how it goes. And you can see here I have Septimus, Manaya, I've got Crimson Helm, and I've got 2 man-eaters. Now, you don't need 2 man-eaters. I'm going to just throw that out there right now. I would definitely be able to do this with, say, like Sir Nicholas or a tower, champion like that. But you do need another block damage champion with a 2-turn duration or unkillable, either way, right? That's definitely something that you're going to need to be able to make this work. As far as the setup goes, so you have an understanding, this way I can talk about the speeds a little bit and you guys know where I'm referring to. So I've basically, everybody's just faster than the stage 19 boss. That's the key, because we're using Revive Undeath on that first turn. We need to make sure everybody revives when they die. So having everybody at least 240 speed, that's the minimum. Outside of that, the only difference is how is the order. Who's fastest, who's second fastest, who's third fastest. As long as the speeds are over 240, you're going to be in good shape. And I'm running these on even low levels, and I have champions that are like 250. So it can work with faster speeds if that's easier for you guys. Now, like I was saying, how do I want to make this work? Well, the idea is I'm going to have, somebody go fastest. I think in this case is actually one of my man-eaters. Then comes my Septimus damage dealer. After that, I believe is going to be, who do I have after that? I think my other man-eater is going to be third in the team order. And that's the spot that you absolutely have to have third in the team order, is one of your man-eaters, okay? And then after that, I have Manaya for healing, and I have Crimson Helm for revive. So basically, the boss goes on 4-turn cooldown, right? They use your Feasting Swarm, and then 4 turns later, they'll be using Feasting Swarm again. So everything's wrapped around that duration of time, right? So everything on a 4-turn cooldown works really well. Well, we know Man-Eater's A3 ability, the Ancient Blood, the one that keeps us unkillable, blocks the debuffs, it is a 5-turn cooldown. What happens is, though, when this boss goes to sleep, we don't break the shield. We don't break the sleep. I keep calling it shield. We don't break the sleep. So when he wakes up, we still have a couple extra turns. So basically the first 3 champions in this tune all will take a second turn. Now, obviously we're not using Giant Slayer. We're not using War Master. It sucks, but that's just the reality of it. But in addition to that, with this team, we have single target hits on everybody, right? So we're getting a lot less hits in, so we allow the sleep to expire naturally. That lets us get 3 more attacks from 3 of our champions, and that's why this man-eater is basically getting a 5th turn. And that's how we're able to actually keep him in tune. Now, like I said, I have to manual the setup because to get to that spot, he doesn't have enough skills to set it up so it can run on auto. So that's the biggest limitation. The other thing I found is there is definitely a bug, or I don't know, maybe it's designed, but when somebody gets down to 1 max HP, the boss will go ahead and just use the A1 and spam that. And if that happens, we'll actually die. We need to have our revive come into play. So I had to bring in an AoE healer. That's why I have Manaya, because we have to erase some of that max HP lost so we never get down to 1 max HP. So that's going to be really important. That also means turn meter steel champions aren't going to be something you're going to want to bring in here. But otherwise, it's actually really simple. Now, you can see I only have Septimus in here, just 1 damage dealer, only 1-star blessing, so that even the smite isn't very consistent at all. He's not great for this. He's good. Max HP champion, as good as any of the others. But we don't have decreased defense in here. We're definitely missing some things. And ideally, I'd be able to bring some of that in here with us. But unfortunately, I don't know how I would do that. I just don't see that being a real possibility, unfortunately. So we're kind of stuck with what we have here. The Manaya spot, right? I could, I have both my man-eaters going fast. They're one's going first, one's going third. So they're both taking a 5-turn duration. That's why I can use 2 man-eaters, right? Because they both take that extra turn when the boss sleeps. If I wanted to, I could swap the position of Man-Eater and Manaya, so I get my healing on that 5-turn cooldown, and I have my Man-Eaters then on a 4-turn cooldown, in which case I wouldn't use Man-Eater, I would use Sir Nicholas, or I'd use Roshkar the Tower. Totally usable. The hard part then is, though, I need that AoE heal on the 5-turn cooldown, because you still have to heal everybody while the boss is asleep. It's the only way to recover your HP, so getting those 2 things kind of in sync is the trick here. Obviously, there's plenty of options. I think Thanasil actually might work really nicely instead of Manaya. He has an AoE heal. I just didn't want to build him out, but I think that would be a very, much more affordable way to substitute a champion in here, so you don't need to use the legendary, because I think it's on a 5-turn cooldown. So that would work nicely if you wanted to do that instead. And, you know, like I said, Septimus is a good choice, but I think there are other choices of champions that you could bring in here. You know, it's just about basically doing as much damage as you can consistently. Now, you can land debuffs while he's asleep, but it's going to be erased the very next turn, so it's not really something that you need to worry about. That's not really, I would say, the strongest approach when getting to these later stages. And so that's it. I just bring in max HP champion there and call it a day. So that's what we got going on. There is one other option you could do, which I don't know how effective it would be, but basically just putting everybody in a regen set, let them heal themselves when they take a turn, should erase some of that max HP. And hopefully if you can, you know, bring it, then you would allow you to bring in a second damage dealer instead of Manaya, and maybe that would actually, you know, make you run a little bit faster and allow you to, you know, be more effective in it. That's a possibility. I don't know exactly how effective that would be necessarily, but you know, that's one way to avoid having to have a healer in there. It probably would work decently well, but you're really, your max HP gets reduced a lot in this, so I feel like having a big AoE healer like a Manaya would be more advantageous. Anyway, that's the team. So let's go ahead and run this bad boy out here, and I'll talk a little bit about how it works. So I have everything set up to work on auto. Basically, everybody's just using their A1, except for Crimson Helm, who I need to have that revive on death. And then we're going to manual the second turn, and then that's it. So it's not a fast run, right? And Manaya survived. I have my Manaya built way too tough and tanky. That's a no-go. If she survives, it's a no-go, so I got to try this one more time. We need her to die. And I really only have to worry about the first turn. The rest of the time, they're taking damage pretty consistently. Once they revived, actually, they start off so low anyhow. It's not going to be much of an issue. So there we go. We all died. Now I need to... now I need to try that one more time. We got that Unkillable up one turn too soon. Because people take double turns, I have to give a little bit of a skip there with the Man-Eaters. And that's why we're manualing. It's basically for those Man-Eater turns. Is essentially what it comes down to. All right, revive on death, great. Turned off auto, Manaya survives. We're just gonna waste our energy today. It was good times. I love this dungeon, love this dungeon. All right, there we go. Man-Eater goes, okay, let's get it going auto. Try it one more time here. This is cool, professional. Definitely clean runs. What I do? Okay, there we go. A1 right there. And one thing I do want to turn off is that A2 for Man-Eater. I don't want him accidentally stealing turn meter. That'll definitely mess things up. That's definitely not recommended. So I have to do that as well. All right, so now we go. Everybody kind of went. You see the boss is still asleep. Manaya goes. We're gonna give that AoE heal. That'll erase any max HP that's lost. Crimson Helm can go. And basically everybody's gonna be taking their turn right here. The fast Man-Eater I'm using Unkillable is really just for this turn. This is where, you know, in that Manaya slot, you could use the Tower or Sir Nick, for example, as an alternative possibility. If you're bringing Thanasil in, Septimus goes, wakes up the boss, and there goes Man-Eater. So obviously you don't want to wake the boss till the sleep expires, so you got to be careful about the number of hits that you're bringing in outside of that, but otherwise pretty easy. And at this point, and click auto, right? We had that Unkillable, so we weren't killed by the A2 ability right here. What's it called? Dune Tempest. And then there you go. You can see the other Man-Eater puts up the Unkillable ability that blocks all the debuffs. Don't have to worry about that at all. And we're good. And by the time that expires, we'll get the Revive on Death from Crimson Helm back up, and we'll be good to go. So this is a nice, simple tune. Like if maybe you're like me, and you don't want to just toss in all your toughest champions and see how to make it survive. And you're like, I just want a speed tune. I just want to get through this. This is something that you can do to advance on the dungeons. Now, once you get to a level that you want to farm, it's a different story. I think people might be interested in farming something like stage 16. I know a lot of people are farming stage 11. I was able to get through to stage 11 just by bringing in like my Tyrant, and I think maybe on stage 10 I had to bring in a little bit of help, like an Elva, and I think I did the same thing for like stage 12. So it was a little bit tougher, but nothing like crazy that I couldn't figure out on my own. And obviously, you know, I will work on something a little bit, you know, really player friendly for the lower stages for farming, right? But this is going to be really, really effective, I think, as far as like just getting myself up into the 20s so I can start farming or start advancing into the later stages. For an endgame player like me who doesn't have god tier gear, this is a great way to advance my account without having to, either wait and farm a heck of a lot more crazy gear, or totally revamp all the champions I already use. And so it becomes a nice alternative approach to this. Right now, I don't have any War Master or Giant Slayer on any of these champions. That said, we're letting the boss be slept on that first round through, right? So I could put Giant Slayer or War Master, I guess it would be, on Septimus. I think we have enough gap for hits to be able to make that work. It's a little, it's because it's a 60% chance. It doesn't happen all the time, and as we know, when that procs, it counts as another hit, which is really annoying. But basically what we can do is just like look and see when he sleeps, are there any hits left? If he has at least 2 hits left by the time he wakes up, that allows us, by the time he goes through his first turn on the sleep, that would allow us to go ahead and get an extra hit in. So we can count right here, right? That's 5. We got Septimus is 1. There's Maneater. Now here comes the heal from Manaya. Here comes Crimson Helm. So putting it on probably isn't a good idea. As you can see, if that happens, even if one War Master hit procced on that case, he would wake up 1 turn too early, and we wouldn't get that 5th turn in for our Maneater. So okay, so I've talked myself through that. No War Master, no Giant Slayer. Obviously, no turn meter effects, whether it's masteries or gear. No cooldown skills, whether it's masteries or gear, outside of Septimus, right? Our max damage dealer, we can have absolutely with as much cooldown stuff as possible. Cyclomagic would be great because we just want to use that big hit as many times as possible. So reflex gear is actually probably the ideal choice in this situation, which I don't have him in. I have him in Savage to do more damage, but there is a max on the damage that he can do anyway with his big hit. I'm assuming he's, not weak hitting, and he's horrible affinity for this, so this run is going to be like forever in a day. But you can see our max HP due to Manaya is not so low that it's going to make the boss start using the A1s only. I can run this as long as it takes. It doesn't matter, right? I'm just trying to advance my account. I'm not trying to farm it with this team, and this will take me all the way from stage 13 all the way to stage 19, which is what I'm looking to do. So I build it once, don't ever have to worry about it again, and easy peasy. Look at that. 22 minutes. Super fast. It doesn't matter. I just have to do it once. I never ever have to do it again. That was a bad affinity, so obviously it takes longer than it would normally. But we just keep climbing, right? I don't have to stop. I just unlocked another stage that I hadn't done before. And now we go to the next one. It is that easy. It's not that fun, but it is that easy to be able to do. So if you're looking to climb, this is an easy way to do it. So you can see, not a fast run. And actually, if you look over, you can see behind me all the different runs I've done for the different stages here, right? Like going from all the way from, 13 here, all the way up. You can see 14, I think, is where I started using this, because the timing got pretty high. And then, they're all in like that kind of 10 to 20 minute range. Depending on what I was using, and affinity definitely mattered because I was using Septimus, right? So it didn't always work well. You can see when he's weak affinity, a 22-minute run isn't the best. But we're able to climb using this type of a team. And that's all it took, is like literally an hour and a half out of my day. Did it. Now I never have to do it again, right? And if I want to go back and farm one of these stages, then I can build a team specifically for farming that stage. but it's unlocked, and that means I can hit the higher levels if I want to, or I can still go back and farm the lower levels. Now, obviously, not everybody has an unkillable champions. This dungeon is super tough. This might not be the approach for everybody, and you don't have to use this approach either. But for a lot of you out there, I know using an unkillable team is really convenient because you don't have to worry about their HP, their defense, their crit rate, their, all this other stuff in order to make it work perfectly. You're just like, okay, look, I'm going to toss this together. As long as I hit the speeds, that's enough. And that's one of the advantages of using unkillable teams. Now, I did talk a little bit about substitutions. In this build, there are 3 champions going on a 5-turn cooldown. That means their skills need to happen on a 5-turn cooldown. This is why Maneater is so useful for it. There's 2 champions going on a 4-turn cooldown. Now, obviously, one of them needs to be my Revive on Death champion. Unless I just don't book one fully. That's always an option. And then that champion can be on a 5-turn cooldown. But otherwise, everybody's kind of on that, you have 2 champions on 4-turn, 3 champions on a 5-turn cooldown. I have to adhere to those rules, right? In this build, I had 2 Maneaters and my DPS Septimus on a 5-turn cooldown. It worked perfectly, right? Maneaters have 5-turn skills, 5-turn cooldowns on their unkillable ability, and works really well. And Maneater's particularly good because he also blocks debuffs, right? My, DPS, it doesn't matter how many turns they're taking. The more, the merrier, really, because we're not landing any debuffs anyway, so it's not like I have to time when the max HP hits are coming. I'm just going to try and get them in as best I can. My healer, I do feel like, is important, right? We don't want the boss to heal more than we're actually dealing damage, so bringing in a healer, I feel like, is pretty crucial. You could just try to out-damage him, and that might work for you, but once everybody's max HP is really low, it becomes very hard to do that and can make the runs really, really slow. So I do recommend bringing that healer in. Now, most champions in this game are on 4-turn cooldowns, which makes this a little bit harder than it might be otherwise, right? But because of that, I feel like we can still have success here. So, bringing in my tower or Sir Nicholas in place of one of those 4-turn cooldowns could be a really good way to go. I could do that. And instead of maybe one of my Maneaters, and in that case, I would have to bring in a healer that works on a 5-turn cooldown, or just not fully book one of my Revive on Death champions, so that's on a 5-turn cooldown instead. That's definitely a possibility, right? And so those are kind of the things that you want to think about when you're using this. How do I go about doing it with different champions? That would be how I would do it, right? For my recommendation, 1 Maneater for sure I think is essential, and then you can bring in another, unkillable champion, a tower, a skulk tower, or a Sir Nicholas for the other one, and I think that should work just fine for you. But you are going to need that. And outside of that, it should work pretty well for you. It's just going to be about the timing of it, right? Because you do have to manual that opening part of it, but once you do that, it's a breeze, right? It really is. It's nice and simple after that point, and you really only have to block damage for 3 turns effectively. Once you can do that, you're going to be in really good shape. So, yeah, that's it. That's the team. That's all. That's it. That's simple. I mean, I don't know if it's simple, but that's how I make it work, right? And so, yeah, that's it. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you guys are able to climb this dungeon a little bit. Obviously, I'm going to continue to try to find some more stuff for you guys. I find this speed tuning of this kind of fun. I don't like the dungeon, but I like the speed tuning part of it. So I'm going to keep trying to find some new and different things for you. But this is how I advanced. And, you got to find what kind of works for you. And this, to me, was the simplest way for my account to be able to do that. Maybe it's the simplest way for yours. Hopefully it is. If not, hopefully you guys have found better ways to do it yourselves. Anyway, that's the video. I've been rambling long enough. Much love to you guys. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. I do appreciate it. And until next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.